whoever you are. I'm going to hand over this morning immediately to the Venerable Paul McNess, who will take the chair. Paul, over to you.
Thank you, thank you, Bishop. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our online session of the governing body. First time chair, long time fan. So this morning we'll be following the order of service in the grey leaflet, the agenda leaflet as prepared, beginning with agendum 13. We're going to do some tests just to check that everything is working. I suppose the first thing is that we're going to run a test poll. I'm going to ask Mr. Matthew Chinnery, who's the head of legal services, to run a test poll for us. This poll is non-binding on the governing body.
Thank you very much, Chair. So a poll should have just gone up onto your screen now, and our webmaster, Mr. Mike Wakeman, has put one of the burning issues of the day up on our screen, and you are all beginning to vote on it. There is a yes, a no, and an only if Gareth Bale stays fit, which I think will magically become an abstain when we get to the polls that actually count. So I am seeing already that everybody has been able to vote in that poll, which suggests that it's working. Only some people are coming into the meeting and immediately voting. We will leave that open for a minute, so another 15 seconds or so. Just to say, we are not anticipating currently any votes by orders in today's business. If for reasons of our standing orders, we are required to do a vote by orders, there will be a short adjournment whilst we set the software up to run that. And those in previous meetings will recall that we will ask the orders to vote separately, and the poll will come up on everybody's screen. So you will need to follow those instructions carefully. But we do undertake a manual double check once the polls are done. So if you have voted in the wrong order, if you could kindly fess up in the chat, either directly to me or to everybody, then we can just we can get those votes excluded. But as I say, we are not anticipating a vote by orders today, so it'll be a vote of the whole governing body, just as on your screen now. So if we end that poll, please. It's on a knife edge, but the view of governing body is that Wales will only qualify for the Football World Cup if Gareth Bale stays fit. So with that, I hand back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Also to say, reminder that only those who are eligible to vote should vote in polls as we go forward. I will remind you that as we go through each of the polls this morning. I think now probably best to test the translation equipment. You should, at the bottom of your pages, see an interpretation button, and I assume if you press that, you should get the interpretation. You can click either off English or Welsh. I think whatever one you press, you're going to get Welsh coming through the sound. So please, you get the translation from the Welsh into English there. I would encourage members of the governing body, if you are first language or a Welsh speaker, please do speak in Welsh. Gives Tudur something to do, but also it's important that we, as a bilingual church, we do use both languages. Is there anything else that we need to do? Yep. Okay. Is it working well? Good. Brilliant. Thank you. And so then I think that concludes sort of the tests that we need to do this morning. Reminder that if you want to make any amendments, please send them via email to amendments@churchinwales.org.uk. You should also get in the chat function regularly the details for the help desk. And please bear in mind that when you put in a comment in the chat box, unless it says to the hosts and panelists, everybody can see it. Okay, so do not put anything in there that you would not wish anyone else to see. Thank you. That then brings us to Agendum 14, and Agendum 14 is the opening prayers. So I would like to invite the Reverend Zoe King to lead the governing body in our opening worship.
Good morning, everybody. So let us be still in the presence of God. The Lord be with you, and also with you. Reading from the prophet Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me. He has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and release to the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to provide for those who mourn in Zion, to give them a garland instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the mantle of praise instead of a faint spirit. They will be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord to display his glory. On the first morning, God said, "Let there be birds," and God separated voice from voice, and in some voices God put a song, and the song sang to the land, and to the light on the land. And when the people heard it, the morning had begun, the first morning. And God said that it was good. And on the second morning, God said, "There will be dreams from the night that will need the light of the morning." And so God put wisdom in the early hours, the second morning. And God said that it was good. And on the third morning, God said, "Let there be a certain kind of light that can only be seen in the morning." And God created gold and dew and horizons and hills in the distance, and faces that look different in the light of the morning, and things that look different in the light of the morning, the third morning. And God said that it was good. And on the fourth morning, God said, "Sometimes the day will be long. Let there be a warmth in the morning. Let people sleep for some mornings, and let the rest of the morning be good." The fourth morning. And God said it was good. And on the fifth morning, God said, "There will be people who will rise early every morning, whose day will begin in the night, by the light of the moon and stars. They will see the sunrise, these early risers." And God put a softness at the heart of the dawn, the fifth night. And God said it was good. And on the sixth morning, God listened, and there were people working and people struggling to get out of bed, and there were people making love and people making sandwiches. There were people dreading the day and people glad that the night was over. And God hoped they'd survive. And God shone lights, made clouds and rains and rainbows and toast and coffee, places to love the light and places to hide from the light, small corners to accompany the lonely, the joyous, the needy and the needed, the sixth morning. And God said that it was good. And on the last morning, God rested, and the rest was good. The rest was very good. And God said that it was very good. A reading from the first epistle of John. God abides in those who confess that Jesus is the Son of God, and they abide in God. So we have known and believed the love that God has for us. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. Love has been perfected among us in this, that we may have boldness on the day of judgment, because as he is, so we are in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, for fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not perfection in love. We love because he first loved us. Those who say, "I love God," and hate their brothers or sisters are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. The commandment we have from him is this: those who love God must love their brothers and sisters also. And so, in a time of silence, we place into God's hands all those who are vulnerable, in danger, and frightened of the world they live in. We place into God's hands those who are burdened by physical, mental, or spiritual health problems. We place into God's hands those who worry about clean water, food, money, education, and their housing. We place into God's hands all those who suffer violence and persecution. And though we can find it challenging, we also commit those who commit violence and persecution. We place into God's hands each other as we continue our work together for the kingdom of God here in our own beautiful land of Wales. And so, in the language of our prayers, we pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. We say together, Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, union. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Eternal God, grant to us this day and every day such readiness and delight in following Christ, that whether our lives are short or long, we shall have lived abundantly. Amen.
Thank you, Zoe, for our opening worship. We now move to Agendum 15, the report of the Standing Committee, and it's my pleasure to invite the new chair of the Standing Committee, Dr. Sian Miller from the Diocese of Swansea and Brecon, to present the report and move the recommendation.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well. Please bear with me if I splutter a little bit because I'm getting over the awful COVID. So you've all had a chance to read the Standing Committee report, and I hope that you've all had a chance to absorb the contents of it. Just bear with me a second. Right. So, as you're aware, I'm going to splutter. Apologies. Oh, sorry, I'm struggling.
Don't worry, Sian, just take your time.
Sorry, oh. Right, let's plough. You will all have had a chance to read the report and to look at the recommendations at the end. There will be an opportunity to speak at the end of the report as we move to the motions. So please bear with me as we go through the report very briefly, and and hold fast with your questions. As you can see, we've had a change of personnel, and I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Heather Payne as Vice Chair of the committee, and she and I will remain in post for the remainder of this triennium. In addition, Sir Paul Silk is co-opted to the committee, and this will be very, very helpful as it ensures that we have close ties between the Standing Committee and the Governance Reform Working Group, or GROUP as it is more popularly known. We've managed, sadly, to lose 2 people, but because they've both moved on to happier things, Archdeacon Peggy from Llandaff has retired and has left the province, and Mrs. Jenny Wilson has moved to Llandaff and is no longer a member of the Standing Committee. But we would like to thank them both for their extraordinary hard work and diligence. We managed to have a joint Standing Committee and representative body during the year when we held it online, but we are planning to have another one in next month, meeting in Venue Cymru in Llandudno, and that will be on the 11th of October. Excuse me. Anybody tells you COVID's not a big deal, don't believe them. In terms of governing body matters, we had a governing body meeting in spring, and in addition to this one being planned this week, we've now got one for April 22 planned. Sorry, the dog is going to bark, I just know it. We looked at very carefully the locations that we could have chosen, looking at Cardiff, for example, or Swansea, and also looking at even considering Llandrindod, but the venue at the ICC has worked very, very well this week, and so for the April 22 meeting, we've actually opted to go back to the ICC Wales. There will be an update on the Year of Biblical Literacy, and that will be taken at this meeting of the governing body. We'll also have an update on the progress of our move towards a better understanding and engagement with the climate emergency. We're very, very grateful to Dr. Heather Payne, who will bring forward a report from the Anglican Consultative Council networks. She's worked very diligently and proactively with them. Safeguarding has obviously been a very important matter this year, and we received a report on the progress with this new Safeguarding Committee and appointed an initial 4 members, including a new chair, who is also the chair of the Safeguarding Panel. The Safeguarding report was received from the newly appointed Director of Safeguarding, which explained that when the unification of safeguarding governance functions has been completed to the new Safeguarding Committee, the Standing Committee will receive regular reports from that committee. The Standing Committee received a report that suggested that diocesan bishops and diocesan secretaries be consulted on the action plan resulting from the 2019 report from the working group on the representation of women in the church. If people remember, I was actually a member of that. We were very keen at that meeting to make sure that we didn't lose momentum, and I think sadly we have lost a little bit of momentum. So as we move into next year, we will be considering the next steps and looking at what the responses we can receive from the diocese at our next meeting. Excuse me. As you're all aware, The meeting for the Electoral College for the See of Swansea and Brecon has met, but sadly has not achieved a conclusion. So that is now back with the bench, and I'm sure we'll hear information as it moves forward. The governing body will also receive a report from the representative body. That will be later on today. You will be aware that the bench commissioned a report into Monmouth, and that inquiry has now taken place. And the standing committee has been informed that the reviewers were considering submissions from those involved before finalisation of the draft report and understanding of the lessons that can be learned from it. I'd now like to invite people to make comments.
Before we do that, we need to formally second the motion first, which I think Dr. Heather.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Sean, and I'm so glad to see that you're better enough to be with us online, and I hope you continue to recover very rapidly. As you say, COVID is not a simple condition, and I hope you're better soon. Just to formally second the motion for your acceptance as governing body of the standing committee report that, as Sean has said, we have done on behalf of you and the whole church. As Sean has said, and first of all, I was delighted and privileged to be elected as vice chair to support Sean as our chair. And as Sean has mentioned, my good fortune, privilege to have been nominated as the lay representative to the Anglican Consultative Council, I think has been a real gift, a real eye-opener. And if I could just remind ourselves of the actual the 5 marks of mission that the Anglican Consultative Council, which is all our brother and sister churches, Anglican churches around the world, that is, of course, it's the 5 T's: to tell the good news of Jesus Christ, to teach and baptize, to tend other people and care for them, to transform unjust structures, and to treasure our world. So we're going to be hearing later on some additional things which focus on those. That is our core work as the church. And so I would respectfully like to commend this standing committee report to you, because this is what we are trying to do in your name. So I formally second this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Payne. The report is now up for discussion. If anybody wishes to make a comment or ask a question, please feel free to do so. Can I remind you that standing orders are now in force, and if you are going to ask a question or make comment, please give your name and the diocese you represent, or the constituency you represent if you're a co-opted or ex officio member. And I ask if the provincial secretary can let us know if anybody wishes to speak, and then call them.
Thank you, Chair. I see no hands raised at the moment.
Give it 30 seconds, and then otherwise we will move straight to a vote. Nope. Okay.
No hands raised.
Thank you. In which case, if I could ask the assessor to put the poll to the governing body, and remind people, please, if you are a non-voting member, please do not vote. We will know.
Thank you very much, Chair. Now, hopefully on your screen, you'll have in nice large text and bilingually the motion before you, which has just come up on my screen. So if I now might ask Mike to launch the poll, please. That has arrived on my screen and it will be open for 60 seconds. Thank you. We are halfway through the voting period, another 30 seconds. Thank you, Mike. If you could close that poll, please. And Chair, I confirm the results as 96 votes in favour, no votes against, and 4 abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chinnery. Right, we then move to Addendum 16, which is the Standing Committee report on governance and legal matters. There is a paper relating to this. Those who've got hard copy, it's a white thing, saying report of the Standing Committee on Governance and Legal Matters. This is perhaps not the most glamorous of items on the agenda, but for some of us, we like it a lot, which is probably why I'm chairing this item. But also, these are important matters because they relate to the rules in which we operate as the Church in Wales. And so I call upon the Reverend Canon Stephen Kirk, the chair of the drafting subcommittee, who will present the report.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. This is the report of the Standing Committee. Oh, I'm Stephen Kirk, by the way, elected member of the governing body, a nominated member of the Standing Committee. As the Chair has said, you have before you the report of the Standing Committee on Governance and Legal Matters. And I will seek to present this this morning without making any of you cry. You have in the report a summary of the recommendations, which may be useful for you. Those are on page 8 and 9. And if you want to look at the details of all the amendments that the recommendations will propose, they're on pages 10 and following. The bill to permit the liturgical variations to authorise liturgies has now been published, and there are opportunities for amendments to be put to that. I don't intend to say anything more on that. And of course, the bill to authorise experimental use of proposed revisions to the Book of Common Prayer was dealt with on Monday of this week. The Governance Reform Working Group, there is a proposal for some minor constitutional matters. The first matter is a correction, a typographical error about the timetable for the minimum age of membership of the representative body, because in one place it refers to the age 16 and in another 18, and 18 is the correct age. And there is also a proposal to reduce the notice period required for the introduction of a bill from 4 to 2 weeks. That then is recommendation 1. And I think with your permission, Chair, it might be easier for us to deal with each of these recommendations as they arise.
I think that's very sensible, Canon Kirk.
I propose recommendation 1.
And that is going to be seconded formally, I believe, by Dr. Sian Miller.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It gives me great pleasure to actually support Stephen's work in this and to recommend that you actually applaud and approve this recommendation.
Thank you. That recommendation is now open for discussion, comment or question. And so I'll ask the lay secretary to scan to see if anybody wishes to do so.
There appear to be no speakers to that.
Okay, in which case, if I could ask the head of legal services to administer the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Leon, can we have the slide, which should cycle through Welsh and English as we are voting. And then can we launch the poll, please? Everybody voted very quickly on the last one, so we're going to go for 45 seconds for these votes. Thank you. Fifteen seconds left to vote. Thank you. Can you close the poll, please, Mike? And Chair, I confirm that we have 91 votes in favour, 1 vote against, and 2 abstentions. So that is carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Canon Kirk then for recommendation 2.
Thank you very much indeed. This is also from Groog, and they have recommended a slight alteration to the timings with regard to calling the archiepiscopal election in order to accelerate the process, because of course at the moment the Constitution says that we cannot proceed with an archiepiscopal election and until there are 6 bishops enthroned, which if we've had an election for a vacancy, can delay the matter. So the proposal is that it should commence at the point when the new bishop has legally become bishop of the diocese, which is the point at which the confirmation of the election at the Sacred Synod is made. The second point on this in this recommendation is about the eligibility of electors at an electoral college. In order to be absolutely clear, the amendment is going to suggest that an elector's eligibility arises at the date of the commencement of the electoral process. So if I could try and explain that. If a bishop retires, say on the 31st of October, the commencement of the process is on the 1st of November. And so those who are electors on the 1st of November are the electors who will be called for that electoral college. If that college doesn't take place until after the 1st of January, it will still be those electors, even if a triennial election has taken place. Please ask if I haven't explained that very clearly. And that is recommendation 2, those 2 matters. So I formally propose them, Chair.
Thank you, Canon Kirk. Dr. Miller, are you going to formally second again?
Thank you. Yes, I am delighted to second this because obviously it brings a lot of clarity to the process and hopefully will stop us drifting and as we fail to elect bishops, at least when we start the process, we can move on quickly with the archiepiscopal election. So I recommend this heartily to governing body.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. We then will move to open the matter for discussion. If I could ask the lay secretary to look for any comment or question.
Certainly. There are no hands raised.
Thank you. In which case, if I could ask the assessor to administer the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Are we okay with the slides now, Leon? I noticed things were ticking past. Yes, we are. Marvellous. Thank you. There's a slide on your screen. The full amendment and details are in your papers, and I will now launch the poll for 45 seconds. Thank you. Twenty seconds left.
We're getting that one of the members can't see poll. If you want,
Could we stop the poll for the moment, please, Mike, and we just investigate whether that's just a single issue or anybody else?
is there anybody else? Please raise your hand if you.
There are no hands raised, Chair.
In which case, can I ask if somebody from the Secretariat can make contact with the Reverend Kevin Hasler to get his vote, please?
Thank you. Chair, in which case I will give a preliminary result on that poll, but I don't think it's going to change things. We have 92 votes registered in favour, 2 votes against, and 1 abstention. So with only 1 vote missing, that is clearly carried regardless. But if my colleagues could just check with Kevin Hasler that everything is in order on future polls, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us then to recommendation 3, Canon Kirk.
I'm going to take 3 and 4 together as they are together in your paper. Although they're slightly different matters, nevertheless, I think we can easily deal with them. The first is a clarification about when triennial membership cycles actually begin. This arose because there was an emergency meeting of the Standing Committee at the beginning of this year in order to deal with some of the regulations which were needed to be put in place because of COVID. And it wasn't entirely clear who was in the chair and who should be called for that meeting. So this will make it absolutely clear, and while we're at it, the same was done for the representative body. So that's recommendation 3, and recommendation 4 is simply a matter of putting into place a procedure whereby a diocesan conference may bring a motion to the governing body. So I move recommendations 3 and 4.
Thank you. Sian, are you?
I am delighted to second these. For those of us who sat in standing committee with Mrs. Liz Perkins retiring at midnight on February the 8th, the excitement was almost more than we could bear. So I heartily commend these 2 recommendations to you.
Now, procedurally, I understand that there will be 2 separate votes for this. So what we will do is open both up for discussion. Both these recommendations are discussion, but we will take the 2 recommendations as separate votes. So, Lay Secretary, if you can see if anybody wishes to make comment or ask a question, please.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. In which case, if I could ask Mr. Chinnery if you'll administer both polls in turn.
We will do the 2 polls sequentially. Thank you. So if we can have the slide ready for recommendation 3. Thank you. And the poll, please, for 45 seconds. That is now launched on my screen and I can see people voting. Thank you. 15 more seconds on this. Thank you. We can close that poll, please. That has been passed with 92 votes in favour, 0 votes against, and 3 abstentions. So, and then Leon, if we could then have recommendation, the slide for recommendation 4, please. Thank you, and the poll for 45 seconds, please. That is launched, thank you. Fifteen seconds to go. And thank you, we can close that poll. And this poll is, motion is passed with 94 votes in favour, 0 votes against, and 4 abstentions.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Chair.
Thank you. That's great. If I could now ask Canon Kirk to move recommendation 5.
Yes, thank you very much. The paragraphs which follow recommendation 4 in your booklet, 16 to 22 from the Governance Reform Working Group are for information. There is no recommendation that arises out of them, so I don't see any point in going through them. It's simply to inform you of what is being discussed at the time. Likewise, paragraphs 23, 24, 25 and 26 are also for your information. No decisions have yet been made, and in some cases further work's being done. Paragraph 27 does lead to a recommendation, and this is the request that we looked at whether or not subwardens should continue to be ex officio members of PCCs and therefore of ministry area councils. For example, in my own evolving ministry area, we are seeking to have a ministry area council of no more than about 20 people. But if we had to include all the subwardens, there will be 24 of them before we started. And therefore, this recommendation removes the requirement that subwardens are automatically members of such councils. So, Mr. Chair, I move recommendation 5.
Thank you, Canon. Dr. Miller?
Thank you. I am pleased to second this proposal, this recommendation.
Thank you. It's been brought to my attention that some people have lost their links and have shared their link with other members, which means that we have a few people logging in as the same person. Please don't do that. Please contact the help desk, who will put you back as yourself rather than being the same person in multiple incarnations. I don't think that Doctor Who is present at the governing body. The matter of recommendation 5 is now open for discussion. If I could ask Canon Lloyd if he could just check if anybody wishes to speak.
Yes, Chair, there's one hand raised. I call Robert Evans to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Bob Evans, elected lay member, Monmouth. Could I just ask for a word of explanation? Paragraph 27 is very carefully worded, but notes that there is a problem in what it describes as single parish ministry areas. I think from my reading of the actual appendix that this would apply to all parishes, not just in that one circumstance. Have I read the proposal correctly?
Do you want to take questions as they go along, Chair? Or
I think it might be easier on this item.
Well, I'm going to pass this to Matthew.
The answer is it applies to all parishes. Constitutionally, we have to be quite careful with ministry area language because some dioceses have ministry areas which are not constitutionally one large parish, but are a number of parishes working together in cooperation or in a group. But for most dioceses, you are correct that this would apply to everybody, because in most dioceses, the jurisdictional form that a ministry area has taken constitutionally is one large parish with a single parochial church council. This is something that the Governance Reform Working Group are going to look at almost 10 years from the Harris report, and with the rollout of ministry areas everywhere, how we reflect the new language on the ground in our constitution, and that is something that is being looked at in the longer term. But yes, you have read the recommendation correctly.
Thank you.
Chair, there's another hand raised. I call Anthony Mullins to speak.
Good morning, Chair, governing body. Just a point of clarity, if I may. We're in a transitional period with 3 parishes coming together as one. And Llandudno and Maesteg has 3 churches with 3 sets of sub-wardens. Would this 13-1, the day workers and church wardens and sub-wardens, the deletion of sub-wardens, would that mean that we would have to go back to the drawing table and just elect these people as members of the parish instead of being ex officio lay members as sub-wardens? Could you clarify that point, please?
Once again, I refer to Matthew Chinnery.
What it would mean is that the sub-wardens would not automatically be on the parochial church council or the ministry area council. It would be entirely open for them to be appointed or elected as lay members of the council in the same way as any other eligible lay member.
Or even co-opted.
Or co-opted, of course.
Thank you.
There are no other hands raised, Chair.
Thank you. In which case, Mr. Chinnery, are you happy to administer the poll?
Thank you very much. If we could have the slide, please. Thank you, and the poll, please, for 45 seconds. Ten seconds left. Thank you. We can close the poll, please. This recommendation is passed with 88 votes in favour, 1 vote against, and 3 abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you. We then move to recommendation 6. Canon Kirk, if you're happy to present that.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, paragraphs 30 through to 35 are for your information. The next recommendation relates to the venue of the Archbishop's Electoral College as a consequence of the continuing COVID-19 pandemic, and the proposal is to allow for the election to take place at another place under these circumstances if it isn't appropriate because there are no facilities which would enable social distancing and so on to be upheld in Llandrindod Wells. So this is a temporary COVID-19 resolution to allow us to proceed with the Archbishop's election later this year. So recommendation 6, I move it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I've lost Dr. Miller from my screen. In her absence, I'll formally second the resolution from the chair. So that means that the matter is now open for discussion. I'll ask the lay secretary if he could see if anybody wishes to make a comment or ask a question.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. In which case, Mr. Chinnery, will you please administer the vote?
Thank you, Chair. That is on your screens now on the slide, and we can therefore launch the poll, please. This will also be open for 45 seconds. Thank you very much. We can close that poll. On this poll, we have 96 votes in favour, 2 votes against, and 1 abstention. So that passes. And I pass back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We then move to recommendation 7, which may correct that issue. Canon Kirk.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. This is about gender neutral language. Many years ago, I sat on a group which sought to revise parts of the Constitution of the Church of Wales and make it tidier. It's an absolute nightmare to try and catch up with every consequential amendment which might be necessary when you've changed one part of the Constitution. And because of that, it is not always the case that gender neutral language occurs in the Constitution. And we're asking you just for us to allow us simply to do that whenever we find another error. So I move, sir, Archdeacon, recommendation 7.
Thank you, and I'm glad to see Dr. Miller is back with us. So Dr. Miller, are you happy to formally second?
I'm delighted to second that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If I could ask the lay secretary to see if anybody wishes to make comment or ask a question on that recommendation.
No hands are raised.
Thank you. In which case, if I could ask the assessor to administer the vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We have this on our screens, and if we can then launch the poll, please. This again is open for 45 seconds, and we have 15 seconds to go. Thank you. Please close the poll. This recommendation is carried with 91 votes in favour, 4 votes against, and 1 abstention, and I'm delighted to pass back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Right, move then to the final recommendation, recommendation 8.
Thank you very much indeed. The final recommendation is simply to move the acceptance of the report, which enables you to raise any issues over any aspect of the report of the Standing Committee on Governance and Legal Matters. I will seek to answer any questions, but more likely pass them on to Mr. Chinnery. So I move recommendation 8.
Thank you, Canon Kirk. Dr. Miller?
I am very pleased to second this recommendation.
Thank you. As Canon Kirk said, the whole report is now open for discussion or question. That includes the areas where there haven't been resolutions, recommendations for any action. So if anybody wishes to make any comment or ask question on the entirety of the report or any aspect of it, please indicate by raising your hands, and I will ask Canon Lloyd to look to see if there's anyone who wishes to speak.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I call on Bob Evans to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Bob Evans, elected lay member, Monmouth. Could I just ask about paragraph 17 to 20 and the work on charitable incorporated organisations? I'd just be interested to know who is leading on this and how some of us can get involved in the process. Some of us have an interest in this from a technical point of view, and I think we could offer something of value. So if you could just explain how you're going to carry on the dialogue with the diocese, that would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy to take that, Chair. If
yes.
Thank you. This has been led by the Diocese of Llandaff, as it was originally a private member's proposal that came through them, although it is now being primarily taken forward from a technical perspective by the legal department of the representative body. Consultation is going both through the standing committee, but also now by a separate group through the diocesan secretaries. There is a meeting between the secretariat and the diocesan secretaries on this at the end of this week. I would suggest in the first instance that anything you want to raise this week through the diocesan secretaries, we're also consulting them about how we do consult people in the diocese further at that point. There's several parallel means of consultation and advice going on this, including now with the Charity Commission, who will have to approve any text. But I think this is absolutely a case where all help will be very gratefully received, because it's a very complex matter and is received slightly differently in all the dioceses. But I would perhaps suggest your diocesan secretary in the first instance would be the best way to help you feed in at a diocesan level.
Okay, thank you. That is very helpful.
Are there any others?
There are no other hands raised.
In which case, Mr. Chinnery, will you please administer the poll?
Thank you. That is on screen on a single bilingual slide, so we can launch the poll straight away. Thank you. 45 seconds. Fifteen seconds to go. Thank you. Please close the poll. The report has been approved with 95 votes in favour, no votes against, and 1 abstention. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. And that concludes the business that we had for online session 1. But because we are running ahead of ourselves, we will move to the next agenda item, for which I ask the Reverend Dr. Heather Paint to take the chair, and also for Mr. Chinnery to remain as assessor. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I am live now. Yeah. Thank you very much for taking that session. And as you're the DJ that you're handing over to, I'm also a long-term fan. Great. Now we are on to agenda item 17, which is the report of the representative body, including the accounts for the last year that is ended 31st of December 2020. We have a number of our representative body members present here today, but I'm extremely pleased to be able to introduce James Turner as the chair, and also Hilary Wiseman as the deputy chair. So James, thank you so much, and I realise this will be your last governing body. Thank you very much for all the fantastic leadership that you have offered as we have gone through the years. And I must say, reading the accounts, I know where I should be investing my money. So can I hand over to you to present the report? And of course, this will be subject to a motion, so that it is for everybody in the governing body to be able to ask you questions. And I hope that that will, after you have made the proposal and the seconding, that we will move to that. So over to you, James, and thank you.
Thank you, President, Chair, and members of governing body. So as you heard, James Turner, ex officio member and chair of the representative body. Among your papers for this meeting, you have a copy of the RB's annual report and accounts for the year ending 31st of December 2020, as well as the annual report of the RB's Common Investment Fund, also for 2020. You also have a written report in both languages, which sets out the most significant areas of the RB's work over the past 12 months. The provision of such a report is a new initiative, and it covers the sort of things that I would normally set out orally at this meeting. But perhaps having a written report may be easier. In the past, you've also been provided with printed copies of the minutes of the RB's meetings over the previous year. The minutes of the RB's meetings are now being made available on the Church in Wales website instead, so they can be consulted by you at your discretion. Redactions will of course be made of any confidential or legally privileged matters that are essentially for trustees' eyes only. You have the report as well as the RB's annual report, and really I don't intend to go into detail at this stage. There may be points which come up subsequently in terms of questions, but I do want to draw your attention to just 3 points in the report. Firstly, COVID-19 financial assistance to dioceses. You will see that in January of this year, the RB provided £6.2 million to dioceses to help them respond to the financial pressures brought about by the pandemic. This is an additional £6.2 million to the sum that had already been provided in 2020. But the RB recognised the need and I believe responded responsibly. In terms of overall financial performance, the report includes a précis of the RB's financial performance during 2020, and you will see that the RB's deficit increased quite substantially as a result of the pandemic and its effect on investment income, as well as increased expenditure by way of providing this further assistance to the diocese. So overall, the representative body incurred a loss of £9.4 million. Full details of the financial performance are set out within the annual report and accounts. And the third point I want to highlight is the funding of cathedrals. You will see from the report that the RB has begun the implementation of the recommendations made to it by a small group of trustees charged with investigating in detail the funding arrangements for our cathedrals. The initial steps towards implementation of the report's recommendations were made in June, and there will be further consideration at the November meeting of the RB, and hopefully those funds will be approved for implementation during the coming year. Those are the three items from within the report to draw to your particular attention. You may well, as I've said earlier, have questions and will have the opportunity to ask them really on any matter related to the RB when the motion is debated shortly. However, I'd now like to update the governing body on the appointment of my successor. At its meeting last September, the governing body gave special permission for me to continue as a member of the RB beyond my 75th birthday, which was in December last year. This was to allow more time for my successor to be identified and appointed. In January, the RB convened a small group of trustees to work specifically to devise a process to identify a new chair. The working group, with the endorsement of the whole RB, decided that it wished to conduct an open and transparent process. The working group appointed a professional recruitment firm, Gattenby and Sanderson, to assist it and to handle the advertising and recruitment process. I think it's important for GB to know that the RB strongly felt that the role of chair should not be remunerated, and one naturally the recruitment, and so therefore quite naturally the recruitment process was predicated on that basis. Advertising took place via Gattenby and Sanderson's usual channels, plus within the church in Wales, via diocesan networks and bishops' communications. All applications from within and outside the church in Wales were made via Gattenby-Sanderson. The working group, in consultation with Gattenby and Sanderson, from a long list of all applicants, identified a short list of 3 applicants who were interviewed by the working group in person in late August. Now, in addition to being interviewed by the working group, the 3 candidates also met with 2 stakeholder groups formed specifically for this occasion. One group consisted of a number of RB trustees and some members of the standing committee, and a second group was made up of the provincial staff. The comments and impressions of these 2 groups were fed into the main interview panel, and a preferred candidate emerged. The RB itself met extraordinarily yesterday afternoon to hear from the working group and to accept their recommendations. I'm pleased, therefore, to be able to confirm that the RB intends to appoint Professor Medwyn Hughes as its next chair. Medwyn is currently Vice-Chancellor of the University of Wales Trinity St David, and was instrumental in saving it from closure some years ago at its college in Lampeter. And that, of course, is a campus with which the governing body is very familiar, because we have met there over many years. Medwyn is a communicant member of the Church in Wales, and in fact, a former member of governing body. Medwyn's career accomplishments are very impressive indeed, and trying to just summarize them here would frankly do him a disservice. Suffice to say, he is a man of enormous ability and with a wealth of professional experience that will be tremendously useful both to the RB and to the Church in Wales more generally. We will now work on the exact sequence of events for Medwin to take up his new post officially following my retirement in December. Medwin will be invited to meetings of the RB between now and then as part of the handover process. And a press release and further information and more details will follow shortly. As my time as chair of the RB comes to a close, I would just like to take the opportunity of firstly wishing Medwin all the very best and assure him of my prayers as he takes on this extremely interesting role, which I'm sure he will enjoy very much. Secondly, I would also like to thank all members of the RB and its committees with whom I have served. Being a member of the RB is not for the faint-hearted. Their commitment and diligence over the years is much appreciated. And I have appreciated the support of the RB trustees. I've appreciated the support of other members of the subcommittees, and I have in particular appreciated the support from the members of the National Office, the RB staff. So I've enjoyed working with many people, but in particular, I would like to highlight the two provincial secretaries, Simon Lloyd and John Shirley before him. So to all of you, I extend my very grateful thanks. Chair, that concludes my remarks, but I'd like to propose the motion that the report of the representative body be approved.
Thank you very much, James. That's a very helpful and comprehensive report. And of course, everybody has the actual report in front of them, as well as the summary report. So I will keep my own comments till we get to the end of this item. So could I call on Hilary Wiseman, please, who is the Vice Chair of the RB, and please would you formally second this proposal? Thank you, Hilary.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to, I know I said I wasn't going to speak at this point, but I can't let this opportunity go by without echoing your thoughts at the beginning of this, the presentation of this report, to thank James Turner for his steady hand on the tiller for many years and for his faith in me in helping me to become the Vice Chair of the representative body. As he said, it's not for the faint-hearted, but it is incredibly rewarding. I would also wish to echo his thoughts about the tremendous amount of work that has been undertaken in difficult and extremely pressured circumstances by the provincial office over the last 12 months. So I hope you will indulge me in proposing that. I will second the report with great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hilary. So could I now please throw this open for debate and questions? And of course, as governing body, we are extremely fortunate in having the representative body kind of holding the purse. And even though the investments may not have performed as well because of the economic circumstances, you can see, and it has been a consistent case, that the RB investments have outperformed other equivalent investments. So we are extremely fortunate. But this money is a means to an end for, as we said, the 5 marks of mission now are tell, teach, tend, transform and treasure. So over to you, please, governing body, to ask any questions so that we can actually understand how we are using our resources to do our core business. So I open the debate.
Thank you. There are a number of hands raised, Chair. I firstly call Peter Ratcliffe.
Thank you very much, Chair, Your Grace, members of governing body. Can you hear me first of all?
Yes.
Yes, lovely, thank you. I would like to also add my thanks to Mr. James Turner for his leadership of the RB, and to thank him for the additional financial support, without which our churches will not have survived during COVID. I am concerned about three things. One is in our diocese, I've done a rough calculation. I must declare an interest. I'm a member of the Diocesan Board of Finance, but my concern is that it now costs, just to cover ministry share, around £20 per person per attendee per service. Now, if we say only Bill Batt would say 80% of our congregation, that's going to begin to go up exponentially, and some of our churches are going to struggle very, very quickly. And as the RB is actually the richest part of the church, I would like to invite them to continue their support until we have a clearer picture of how we are post-COVID. The other question I have is, the two questions I have are, on the pension fund, I notice that is part of the RB's general fund. As best practice, my former occupation was as a association of tax technicians and as an accountant, part qualified accountant but fully qualified in tax. Is it not the case that the pension scheme should be separated out from the RB's general fund as a matter of best practice? And are there any implications of this? And finally, I note this is the third time I've asked for sight of the clergy remuneration review, the third year. Would it be possible for us to have sight of this at last and for it to be approved or rejected by a vote of the governing body? Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for those questions. Could I just check with James and Hilary, are you happy to stack the questions and deal with them all at the end?
I'm quite happy to stack them, yes.
Okay, let's have the questions so that we can make sure that you can give a comprehensive answer when everybody has finished asking. So Simon, could you identify whether we have any other hands up?
Yes, we do. Chair, I next call Ian Black.
Am I live?
Welcome, Ian. Yes, you're live. Thank you.
Okay. My question picks up on your comment about the 5 marks of mission. So this is the fifth.
Sorry, could I interrupt you? Just remind you to introduce yourself. We know your name, but your position in diocese. Thank you.
Sorry, Ian Black, Dean of Newport, Diocese of Monmouth. My question really picks up on your comment about the 5 marks of mission and the 5th mark about tending the earth, stewardship of the earth. On page 36 of the accounts, it gives a list of the stock exchange securities, particularly the areas that they're in. And I see we have nearly 8 million invested in oil and gas. And in view of the demonstration that took place at St. Paul's Cathedral the other week, raising the profile of this investment in oil and gas, and you might add other things as well, I wonder if there's an update on the Church in Wales policy here, any plans to disinvest in the future, or what conditions there are or being planned to be placed on such investments and investments in renewables and the developing of alternatives. A bit of a bucket of a question, but it's really about the investment in oil and gas and where we are with it. Please.
Thank you very much, Ian. And obviously, in light of our next agenda item after this and COP26, a very important one. Simon, next question, please.
The next speaker is Jonathan Wright.
Welcome, Jonathan, over to you.
Governing body, looking at the structure of the Church in Wales.
Can I remind you to just introduce yourself, Jonathan?
Apologies. Jonathan Wright, elected cleric, Swansea and Brecon. Looking at the structure of the Church in Wales, it is clear there is a lot of duplication, indeed sextuplication. What is the RB doing to challenge dioceses to work together more cost effectively with a greater level of cooperation? Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Simon, any more?
No, there are no further hands raised. Could I ask Peter and Ian to take their hands down, please?
Thank you very much. So could I pass now over back to James and Hilary to respond to those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Turning to Peter's three questions. The first one related to possible calls for further support in terms of helping dioceses or parishes plan for the future. I think the RB will always consider requests, etc., which come through dioceses. But I think this probably needs to put into the context the view in terms of how is the whole of the church in Wales going to go forward in the future. Yes, taking account of what's happened in COVID, but also in terms of the changing trends we see in our life. The meetings which have been interrupted by COVID, but really the joint meetings between the Standing Committee, the Bench and the RB are very much addressing these big future questions. And it will be in the light of those sort of decisions that the RB will need to look at how its assets are supported and how the funds which it can raise can be used for the benefit of the whole church. So I think, Peter, you're very right to raise that question. I've noted it, and I'm sure others have noted it, but I can't give you a cut and dried answer on the spot. In terms of pension practice, we have in the Church in Wales, in terms of our one integrated investment fund, a fairly unique situation. Nevertheless, every 3 years, following an actuarial review of our pension requirements and pension needs, we undertake a very comprehensive review of current regulations, current laws, etc., to make sure that we are continuing to operate totally correctly, and that our unique position ensures that we do in fact meet best practice. We have an extensive exercise on that currently undergoing at present. Because of that exercise, I come on to your third point. Work on the clergy remuneration review is continuing, but we have had to halt some of it whilst we clarify some current legal questions around our pension arrangements. But the clergy remuneration is not forgotten, and further proposals will be brought to governing body at a subsequent meeting. If I could turn to Ian Black's questions. Ian, I know we've welcomed you fairly recently to the Church in Wales, so you may well not be aware of earlier GB meetings where the RB put forward a proposal, and it was endorsed by the governing body, that we should no longer invest in oil and gas equities. The figures which you have in the annual report are the position as of the end of 2020. The position which we have now is that one of our investment houses is completely out of any oil and gas investments, and the second one was committed as approved by governing body to have exited all those investments by the end of this year. As of here and now this morning, I can't tell you exactly where we are on this. I know they have significantly reduced their holdings. Whether they're now down at zero, I'm not certain, but we do still have a month or two in time. Perhaps on the flip side of that, perhaps I should also highlight to you, if you look through some of our major investment holdings, We do have significant holdings in renewable companies, in wind energy, and that is totally appropriate in terms of our obligations to support the world in which we're living and to address some of the challenges of climate change. Finally, if I could move on to Jonathan Wright's questions, I would heartily endorse the point you're making. I think the RB is always trying to challenge people across the province to be as cost effective as possible. And sometimes there is a toing and froing with the diocese, that the diocese think that the RB has a bottomless pit of financial assets, which can just be drawn on at whim. That's not the case. The RB trustees are always under pressure in terms of trying to ensure that the resources which we have are used effectively, and to recognise that we need to meet the needs of today. We need to be able to respond to emergencies, as we have with the pandemic, but we also have to think to the future and to treat generational issues, both the current generation and future generations, fairly and equitably. However, Jonathan's point is right. Collectively, we could be more cost effective. If you look across the province, let me put it this way, the number of people basically undertaking administration is absolutely huge relative to our size as an organisation. That cannot be addressed just by the RB. The RB has started on a basis of doing its budget on a zero base, so they have to justify every position and every cost. But we really do need to take out some unnecessary duplication in our work. And I think the advantages of that is it would free up money and resources for mission. And mission and growth is surely one of the key drivers of our life in the Church in Wales today. Chair, I hope I've answered those questions from members adequately, but could I hand back to you, please?
Thank you so much, James. Hilary, was there anything you wanted to add?
I don't think I could possibly add anything to James's summation of where we are on all of those points. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other points? Could I apologise for my shortcomings as chair? I completely didn't pick up on Peter Ratcliffe not telling us, my fault, not his, but he's from St David's Diocese and a clerical member. Sorry about that, but there we are, just so that everybody is now aware. So any other hands up, Simon, before we come to the end of this item and go to a vote?
Yes, Chair, there's one hand raised from Marianne Osborne.
Thank you. Marianne, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, governing body. Marianne Osborne, co-elected from St David's Diocese. Listening to what everybody has said this morning, and a really big thank you to James for his response there, and particularly finishing by saying that the heart of who we are and what we are is mission and ministry. And I know that we are all exceptionally grateful for all the support that we have received within the diocese across this time of COVID. But I think I really feel as though I ought to bring to the forefront today the issue that even before COVID, we have been struggling on the ground to do the work of God for quite a period of time now, I think it's true to say. And I just wonder that, bearing in mind that we are refocusing on our mission and ministry, whether the governing body have brought to the table or even held any discussions about releasing further funds so that more individuals can be stipended, lay ministry and also possibly more clerical. A way to do this, I feel, potentially could be if the governing body actually part funded or funded some of our senior staff who are in more administration sort of governance positions, to allow the diocese as a whole to trickle more funding into positions where we're working amongst the people, where we're doing the work of Christ, and allowing us therefore to, what I think the term is, speculate to accumulate, in that more hands to the field, more workers to the harvest, and more harvest to bring in. I just wonder, you know, is that something that may be coming to the table, Dr. Payne? Is this something that we've considered? Thank you, members.
Thank you, Marianne. Now you've posed a question to the governing body generally. I'll invite James and Hilary to respond from their area of actual accountability, but I'm sure that there will be things that we can take away for standing committee and the other mechanisms to address. But please, James and Hilary, please respond.
Marianne, thank you. I welcome that contribution, because I think being prepared to look at new ways of doing things is important as we go forward. And I think this is one of the things which the meeting I referred to earlier, the joint meeting between the bench, the standing committee and the RB, is going to be addressing and coming to terms with when it meets in Llandudno on the 11th of October. So I don't want to give an answer on sort of a piecemeal response, but I think ideas such as the one you have put forward are very worthwhile, and we need to feed them into the general mix and look at how do we balance all the demands, and how do we ensure that above all else we are focusing our efforts and our resources and our energies on what really is our prime focus. So, Marianne, thank you very much for that point.
Thank you, James. Hilary, anything else?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And so, Simon, any further hands, or are we coming to a close?
There are no further hands, Chair. I think you can probably move to the vote now.
Thank you very much. Before I actually take us to the vote, I would just like to finally add my considerable thanks to James, both for answering those questions so comprehensively, but also for all the rest of it. Over the years, being such a fantastic servant to our church and to the Lord Jesus. I shall particularly miss his mantelpiece since we've been online. It's been a fascinating addition behind his head. And it does reflect his wonderfully varied approach and flexible way of dealing, real problem solver. And please don't be fooled with James. Outwardly, he looks like a smart businessman, slim, focused. Inside, he is a burning Christian. And so he has been a fabulous leader for our money in the church in Wales. He has been coruscatingly focused on the work of the Lord Jesus in our lives and in the lives of everybody that we meet. So again, thank you. Diolch o galon, James, for all your wonderful work. We go to the vote now, so please, Matthew, could you administer the vote on this motion?
Thank you very much, Chair. The slide is already up on your screen, so if we can launch the poll for 45 seconds, please. Thank you. 15 seconds. Thank you. Please close that. Chair, I'm pleased to confirm that the motion has been carried. 96 votes in favour, 2 votes against, and 4 abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have completed item number 17, and we are now due for our coffee break. So could I invite us to return at 11:35 and take the opportunity to get maybe a little fresh air, the last sunny day of our autumn, apparently. So thank you, and we'll see you back in 30 minutes.